Here we go. All right. Hello there, my friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and I am joined here by my lovely guest from the house. This is Tanja Andrews of Third Coast Mojo and of my partner. So
he's contractually obligated to say that I'm lovely.
So today, Tanya and I are going to be discussing the full moon in Aquarius I. We're going to talk a little bit about the Olympics that are starting today. We are going to look into the last quarter moon on the 31st, and then just give you a little bit of a preview of the new moon that is upcoming on August the 1st. We're going to do an I-Ching reading. We're going to talk about the animal of the moon and little factoids here and there. If you are with us today, let us know in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, what if you're here, what you're looking forward to looking or watching on the Olympics, or whatever it is that you are excited about right now. I did want to give all of you a heads up before we kind of dive in. I did today post a replay of my talk on the Decans that I did for the Nightlight Astrology Summer Speaker Series. I think it went really well. I was really excited about the audience that came out and the questions, and we had a really nice time talking about the Decans. So if you want to check that out, that's on my channel right now. It's called Face Off, Incorporating the Decans into Your Astrological Practice. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. And I've been putting some information out about astrological tutoring, because a lot of people have been asking me if I do teaching and things like that, and if I could help them with learning some of these things. And the answer is yes, I can help you, and I can just reach out, send me an email, spencermichaudastrology@gmail.com. I do have an astrological tutoring thing that is already available to book on my Acuity link that I have in all of these videos. And I also have some extra days and times available if what I have listed doesn't work for you. So again, send me an email. All right, so all the shameless plugs out of the way. Tanya, do you have any? Do you have any things that you're working on or offerings before we dive into it?
Nothing too new. I have a few things in the hopper, so people should stay tuned. I'm going to have some new offerings coming up in a little bit here. There's some beautiful astrological weather headed our way, and I'm hoping to capture it in a bottle.
Yeah, right. Happy Leo season, everyone.
Right, Leo saison.
So we got Darren is here. It says, I loved your chat at Nightlight, so looking forward to this. Hello from the UK. Well, hello, Darren. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us today, and we're so happy to see you. Deborah is here. Roll call. We have a lot of really amazing international friends that come and participate in these chats, and I think that was one of the things that I wanted to point out right away before we got started is one of the things I love about the Olympics. We were watching the opening ceremonies of the Tokyo Olympics, the long-awaited, delayed Olympics, where all the nations were coming in, and you could see all the joy in their eyes, not necessarily the rest of their face, because they're still having to wear masks with COVID protocols.
You can tell from their eyes, the excitement is there.
Smizing, right?
They're smizing, right? They're channeling their like 90s supermodel.
Yeah, the joy from their smize. So I think that, but what I love about it is just seeing all these nations come together and being able to, find a peaceful moment to have some friendly competition and the spirit of play and things of that nature. It's just really inspiring to me. It's something I've always liked, even since I was a real little kid. I can remember, I have drawings still in my attic somewhere of like me.
And that's
drawing.
True. He does.
Yeah,
I can find them for you.
Yeah, right. Of Olympic rings with like a gymnast or something. I think I drew a gymnastics person in the Olympic rings when I was like 10 because I was just so enamored with all of it.
And why shouldn't you be? It's spectacular. Yeah. Just the feats and kind of the limits that people can push their bodies to, and just the achievement, like watching people kind of come to the pinnacle of their kind of like physical, mental, and even, dare I say, spiritual prowess to just kind of achieve these heights is just something that is so compelling. Like, totally. You can't not love these stories.
Yeah, it's the stories, right? I mean, it's this amazing, every single one of these people are living out their dream that they've
Hmm.
worked for hours and hours and days and months and years to get to this point. I
Hmm.
think that's the thing I love about it too, is this it's so much hope involved in this kind of thing. And I know there's some criticism about the Olympic structure in general. I mean, there is some definite um, inequalities that will come up as far as like developed nations and having the infrastructure in place to be able to train these top level athletes, and
Hmm.
kind of this stark contrast between some of the haves and the have nots. But I think that at the end of the day, everybody that made it there is on somewhat of a level playing field. And even like, you root for the underdog, you root for the countries that have, three Olympians that showed up,
Right. You're like, they got to
like,
get something.
yeah, it's really cool. It's just like you said, it is a spiritual experience because it's just the fruition of a dream. And as we've seen, my daughter and I have been watching the NBA finals with the Milwaukee Bucks, which is another exciting event in our house because my grandparents they lived in Wisconsin, and I used to go and have a religious experience watching the Bucks and the Packers with my with my grandparents. Basically, if you have any idea about Wisconsin sports, they take it very seriously. But mostly, it was just something that people could bond over. And the Bucks won their first championship in the past week for the first time in 50 years, and we were talking about being inspired by the story of a young gentleman named Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is, if you're not familiar with him, they call him the Greek Freak, and
Greek freak.
he's a Greek immigrant by way of Nigeria, and he came to America after selling DVDs and watches on the streets of Athens, and stayed with the franchise that drafted him for 8 years, signed a second and a third contract, which is very rare these days, especially for a small market, to retain somebody like that. And so loyal and just a real pure spirit. And he talked a lot about staying in the moment and the past.
Hmm.
If you get
Hmm.
focused on the past, what was it? If you get focused on the past, it's your
Oh,
ego. If
yeah,
you
yeah.
focus on the future, that's your pride. But your
Hmm.
humility is in the moment.
Hmm.
And I don't know,
And that's where the fulcrum of power is. It's really
right?
interesting that he
Just
kind of
living that
made that
moment.
observation. Hmm.
Totally. And I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of people living in their moment over the course of the next few weeks. We've got some people checking in. Tracy is saying, "Hi, I found you on Nightlight. Looking forward to this full moon talk. I'm a conjure woman too, Tanya. So you're in
Yay, I
good
love it.
company." Uh,
Representing.
Carly is
Beautiful.
here from Los Angeles.
Los
So
Angeles.
thank you, Carly, for stopping by. The 2028 Olympics will be in Los Angeles, so keep your eyes peeled for that, Carly.
Woo, wild times.
Dimfy is here from the Netherlands, so we've got another international contingent. I was very when I watched the opening ceremonies today, the Netherlands had like over 400 Olympians, even though they only had like something like 30 million people, which is not a ton compared to some of the other bigger countries. But all those athletes in the Netherlands, they're just so tall. Like I think the average height in,
Growing big,
in the
growing big over
Netherlands
there.
is, yeah,
I
it's a
like
real.
it.
The Dutch are some large human beings. So it's cool though. The very competitive team they have there. Darren says the athletes are incredible. Shame that the IOC is so very corrupt. It needs replacing. I agree with you, Darren. There's definitely when we have an organization that's like basically like a corporate structure, there's definitely challenges to maintaining the purity of it. And I think that
No, and that's such an idea, and things are changing so much even as we speak. I think that the real story to me, in some ways, about kind of the IOC and like the direction of the Olympics is the move towards the inclusion of more women. And I think that like that's interesting when you look at it from the kind of like Leo Aquarius dichotomy that we're seeing, like that kind of balance between like structure and personal expression and kind of the interplay between like the haves and the have nots and like who goes on the pedestal and who's on the outside. And the fact that we're seeing like this is the first Olympics where it's literally almost 50% women, and it's never been like that before. And we're going to get a chance to see so many women doing things they've never even gotten to do before. They've added new categories, and that's come kind of as a big shakeup to how the whole thing is organized. And I think that, this full moon coming between like on this axis and kind of this particular moment is so interesting, because to me, I see that kind of like balance between like that shifting of power from like, in the early 1900s, they allowed like 5 women in, and like they did like croquet. And like one got to ride a horse, and people were like, oh, women on horses, like she's gonna blow out her uterus, like we can't allow, this is madness. Like, but now they're adding categories. They took out a few men's categories to add some extra ones for women. They added some mixed gender categories, which I think is really exciting. And so we're kind of seeing this like inclusion in so many interesting ways. And I think we're seeing so many, different female athletes really having their stars rising right now. And that's something that's really exciting. And so,
well, and that's an interesting mirror that the Olympics holds up to the state of the world, really, because it's so participatory with all these different countries. You're seeing the values and the collective values playing out on this enormous stage that isn't just being watched by, individual states, people, countries, but the entire world has an interest in what is going on due to, all of these participating nations. So it's really fascinating to see the evolution of, the collective sense of like, what are we really doing here as a human species, right?
But also how far we have to go. I mean, I think that when all is said and done, it's great that women are being included in greater levels, but there's still a, pretty substantial kind of financial imbalance. They're going to come out of it, and a lot of the men are going to get these very lucrative sponsorships, and not necessarily as much for the women. Like the financial piece is definitely still kind of in play and something that needs to be worked on. And, you see people talking a lot about kind of the disparity and how they're forced to dress. Like some of the women's teams, they're like, your uniform is bikinis. And they're like, can we just wear shorts? Like that would be a lot more comfortable for doing sports. And people are like, no, only bikinis.
Yeah. I mean, the equality question plays out in a number of different arenas. See what I did there?
Like, he's here all week, folks.
but yeah, and I noticed this, and you're bringing up a great point about the equality between the genders and the sexes and how we're playing that out on this stage. And, I was noticing in the, opening ceremonies, just sort of the differences with specific countries that may be more or less affluent too. Like some of these affluent countries had all this like custom gear and like fancy, like, individually made masks and things like that, where other countries just had kind of the basic, like, hospital mask, right? Yeah. Surgical mask. And just thinking about, I just thought a lot about, the necessary financial infrastructure it takes to train these top level athletes, and the investment that a lot of these Western, colonialized countries have made over a long period of time. And I was just thinking, like, why does a country that has way less people have so many more athletes? Like I was seeing like Australia, for example, has 30 million people, but they had over 400 athletes. But like there was a country, I don't know, it was like maybe the Philippines had like 60 million. They had like 6. These are kind of the questions that I think this brings up. And but again,
we like the idea of sports being this kind of like great, completely level playing field, but
right.
That's definitely not yet.
No, it's not. And acknowledging that, and the challenges, I guess when we're seeing what Darren was bringing up about, some of the challenges with the Olympic Committee, we've seen that leading up to the Olympics with a lot of challenges with, especially incorporating some accommodations for African Americans as far as like swim caps. And like we had a runner here who was, banned for like a month because of a positive marijuana test, things of that nature, where we were seeing some real challenges for that type of thing. And you bring up a great point about the uniforms for, I believe it was the Norway, the Norwegian volleyball team was like, hey, we don't want to wear bikinis. Like, screw
Well,
you.
it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Like the men don't have to wear, the men get to wear shorts, like
Sure.
long shorts that go almost down to their knees. And
Yeah.
like, and to be like, you have to be in a high cut bikini, but the men get to wear shorts is like,
So
it's
some of
not
these
the
things
look. It's 2020.
they're pretty antiquated, right?
2021. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What year is it anymore?
Well, it's confusing because like these are the 2020 Olympics, and
I think maybe that's my brain's got the slosh from that.
And they keep basically pushing 2020 Olympics because I think all of the logos and the
they made the t-shirts already.
Exactly, and they're like, oh, we're not going to change the numbers here, but I wanted to preface all of the things that we were saying, like especially about the inspirational stories, with having a balanced view of the challenges of having a big international event like this too. And I think that really reflects kind of our full moon here. We've got, the I don't know, the disparate, the dichotomy between the haves and the have-nots. We've got the sun and Leo, the concept of selection that Robert Schmidt talks about, those that are in power, that are the king, that are special, that have the spotlight on them. And then you have these folks that are in exile, with the moon in Aquarius being a Saturn-ruled sign. So the fringes of society, those tiny nations with 3 representatives and surgical masks, and they're training on, like, I don't know, a dirt field without grass or something. Like there's stories like that. For sure. And all of that is like, it just mashed up in this whole big, display and soup of humanity right now, which is, I don't know. It's some of it's really heartbreaking, and some of it is like some of the most inspiring stuff you'll ever see in your life. And I think that it's the whole wide range of human emotions, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're also at that thing where it's like Saturn is so in the mix by being kind of like ruling that moon and kind of being near it, and like, it's retrograde. And when I think about that too, like the Picatrix is really down on retrograde Saturn when it's in domicile. Like that's one of the most prolific things, because not only is it powerful, but it's also kind of just like moving contrary to like everything else. So it's just like the things you don't want, they're just like just kind of like a steamroller. And so the sun says, yes, yes. But the kind of like ruler of the place where the moon is says, no, no. And we're kind of going to see, I think we might see some kind of interplay between that, especially amidst the rising infection rates with the coronavirus around all this. I believe the Japanese Prime Minister, the Tokyo Olympics chief was just like, we might still shut this down. They're
that's the crazy thing.
The country is in a state of emergency since the 8th of this month. Like their cases went up, and they're like, it's technically a state of emergency. We're still having the Olympics, but things are happening. Yeah. And there has been kind of like an uptick in cases, like people are getting sick. As of today, there's about 91 confirmed cases kind of in the kind of Olympic sphere, of like athletes and people that kind of came with them, and staff members and people that are kind of involved with running the event already. And if those numbers continue to go up, they are concerned about it being, shut down, because if people are just keep getting sick and then they're going to be going back to their respective countries, people are keeping an eye on it really closely for around those things too. So that's another thing where it's like this bright shining moment, but there's also something kind of in the darkness that's casting a pall over it.
That's the elephant in the room, isn't it? Mm-hmm, I mean, that we literally had the Olympics delayed for an entire year because it was too dangerous to get together. And now we're, in America, we have maybe 50% vaccination rates, potentially maybe.
Yeah, if we're lucky.
And various countries haven't had even equal access to like the vaccines, mm-hmm, and things of that nature. Like we have things like the Delta variant that are going around that are much more contagious and potentially deadly. I was watching some of the NBC coverage of how the press was getting, checked in to the Olympics. They had to go through a 2-week quarantine. They have to have temperature checks at like every checkpoint. There's no spectators at the Olympics. I think that's the really interesting thing too. You got this huge spectacle, but you don't have anybody able to see it in person.
The chairs, they're waving to the chairs. Right? They're like, "Hello, chairs!
Right,
all my dreams are coming true."
That's like the Aquarius moon, right? This kind of like totally distant thing.
Yeah. It's like you're waving at the crowd from space.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And with this lunation, this full moon, you know, the malefics are definitely in play because the Mars is going to be conjoining with, is co-present with the sun, and Saturn's co-present with the moon. So that you and I talked last time about the Cancer new moon, about the malefics not having really any influence on that. But this one, they're going to be
different,
front and center.
Different ball game. Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat here, checking in. Carly says, interesting that the Olympics starting just as Venus dipped into Virgo. Okay, yeah, so we'll have to touch on that today.
Yeah, our girl just stepped off the dignity cliff.
Yeah, she's in her fall. Darren says, true athleticism is indeed spiritual in a weird way. I agree 100%, Darren. I have Neptune in the 5th house, which is, you know, somewhat associated with athletics and entertainment, and I find transcendence through sports. I find it a religious experience for sure. That competition and I, you know, just watching Giannis over the last couple weeks has been that type of experience for me as well. I mean, I don't know if you all are familiar with the story, but he hyperextended his knee 2 weeks ago, roughly 2 weeks ago, completely at like a 45-degree angle backwards.
I lit the biggest prayer candle. It's just like prayers for Giannis's knee.
Well, and they thought that he blew out his ACL and that he'd be gone for like not only all of the playoffs, but like the entire year. And the dude comes back like two games later and starts in the finals and puts forth one of the most historic performances of any, like averaging, you know, 35 points a game or something like that. He put up 50 points in the clinching game to bring home a championship to Milwaukee for the first time in 50 years. So there's something special about he's a Jupiter ruled dude. He's a Sagittarius sun. There's something just right. He's just
sorry, I'm biased.
He's blessed with some kind of story. He's supposed to do something inspirational. Now, I will preface this with saying that, you know, you either what is that saying about you live long enough to become the villain? You know,
something hero. Like that. Yeah,
because I think that eventually, you know, people rise up and then they have to become human again. And that's kind of the cycle. And we've seen that with every type of hero, where we've exalted them into deified status, and then eventually we realize that they're flawed human beings. And I'm sure that will happen with Giannis, but it's just so incredible to see someone on that upward trajectory make it to the top of the mountain. And then, you know, no one's ever going to be able to take that away from them or the city of Milwaukee. So pretty cool. I'm still riding high on that.
You will have to indulge him, everyone, this week. Yeah. This is a huge moment for a very long suffering sports fan. Yeah. But I think you can think about it like there's that solar journey where it's like you are reaching this ascendancy and like this rise of power, and then like the crown gets set on your head. And the moment that happens, people start coming for you, and like circumstances start changing. Like the sun rises and it sets. It goes through, the days get shorter, they get longer. And so the sun is one of those things where it's like, it feels very eternal and very kind of like domineering, but like any powerful thing, it has its natural kind of rises and falls. And we're seeing it at like this apogee of like kind of like power and influence. Like it's midsummer, you know, it's in domicile, and like everyone's just like loving the sunshine and like that kind of vibe of like, we love seeing that power, but we also kind of want to like get a little piece of it for ourselves or like tear it down. So
oh yeah, and that'll happen. And yeah. It's you know, you're totally right on. Like, and we're going to see this reflected in the I-Ching reading for the week as well, with that kind of, you know, zenith that you were describing of power. Yeah, just a couple more chats here. It says, Deborah says, speaking of sports, our Major League Baseball team changed their name from the Cleveland Indians to the Cleveland Guardians. Yes, I saw that today. That is
all right.
So yes, at this full moon, we're having this kind of shift from this, you know, very insulting and
so important. You know, that was such a terrible name.
Right, so right. This kind of like, you know, inappropriate name being changed to something that it isn't, you know, defaming the character of an entire, you know, nation of people, basically.
It's a start.
Yeah,
it's the least they can do, frankly. And like they should do a lot more.
Yeah, we there's been a shift in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years with, you know, the Washington football team did a similar thing to get rid of their racist name, and they still haven't even decided on a name yet. But we're definitely seeing some changes like that. Darren says this is all fantastic. Their relationship with the host cities has yet to follow that trend, however. Yeah, I think that's another great point, Darren, is that the Olympics is like this giant organism, corporate organism that comes into these places. They build a lot of infrastructure, but they probably also have, create a lot of, garbage, pollution, and challenges for the cities that they're in. And poor Tokyo, because, Tokyo, I don't know. I have to imagine they feel like they bit off a little bit more that they could chew, especially because they had the rotten luck of having this in a pandemic where they can't even really sell tickets now. They spent all that billions of dollars on infrastructure and they can't even really get that money back because there's no fans. There's no tickets being sold. And yes, there's, advertisement on TV and things like that. But yeah, there's definitely a dark side for sure. Deborah says the bikini thing was baffling. I agree, Deborah. It doesn't seem like it should be a big deal, right?
So weird.
And then Sherilyn says perhaps sports could replace war in a future, kinder, gentler world. I agree, Sherilyn. That's why. That's part of why I love the Olympics, because it's really not about. I mean, it's friendly competition. I know that these athletes are taking this seriously, but at the same time, there's a truce that happens during Olympic times. Back in those ancient times, they say, okay, nations, we're going to have a truce. We're going to put down our weapons and we're going to have a game, like a child's game. There's that innocence involved in it that it really speaks to me. Angela is here, and Angela says you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. There you go. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. That's neat. That's accurate.
It's true. It's true. So hopefully, I don't want to see my guy Giannis to pass young, but he really is a very humble superstar. So he's somebody that's easy to root for.
He may stay good.
Hopefully,
like
fingers crossed
nice
that he can stay on the right side of I don't know, of whatever history. This is of history. There you go. Okay, so I think we're caught up on the chat here. We've kind of got the basics down for our Olympic experience. Let's look at the two cards, the tarot cards that we are seeing with the decans. We've got this kind of challenge.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking of that. Like, it's so funny to me because when we're talking about, Sherilyn's comment about whether war could be replaced with a game, that was the card that popped into my mind right away. I was just like, there it is. I was like, it's a competition and like, it's serious, but it's not like they're stabbing each other.
It's a mock battle.
It's a mock battle. So it's serious. And like, there's real consequences, but it's not lethal. And I love that about it for this particular moment, because that's exactly what's happening. We're seeing that kind of like, it's deadly serious, but you're not going to like kill someone with your javelin. Not today.
I'll tell you what, I think of it like this: competition, a competitive spirit, sort of this, like, I don't know, this need, I don't know, I'm thinking about this Leo desire to dominate or to do something of that nature. It needs
that's a key word for it. 100%.
Healthy outlet, right? It needs a healthy outlet, and you can either do that through war and like, trying to become an imperialist like force or some shit like that,
like taking everyone's money and building a rocket. I don't know. I shouldn't have.
but if you direct it in the right avenues, it needs somewhere to go. This is like Mars energy, right? Mars energy, solar energy, where it needs this kind of like steam valve. And that's I think a great way to do it. These games, these child's games, and we have it contrasted with we have the mock battle, and we sort of see the result, with Aquarius, where the
thrill of victory and the agony of defeat.
Right. We have somebody that has emerged as the kind of the smug victor, and somebody, others going off into the exiled territory and defeat. So we are going to be seeing a lot of these scenes over the next few weeks here. But I think this also definitely speaks to sort of that experience of the haves and the have-nots, those coming from the fringes versus those that are in those positions of power and of privilege as well. Of course, some of that definitely has to be acknowledged as coming from that very same imperial colonialist type of impulse, that where a lot of this wealth and power has been built off the backs of exploiting people, which is a problem and something that we're trying to reconcile with as a global community, I hope, at this moment in history. All right, so should we take a look at the chart?
Let's get after it.
Screen here. Dive in. Any other factoids before we start about the Olympics?
Oh man, there's a few floating around. We'll pepper them in as we go. But let's get.
All right, so we're looking at the chart that the exact time of the full moon is going to be 10:36 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Make the appropriate adjustments for your time zone. I know that Tokyo is like 10 or 11 hours ahead of us or something like that. Something crazy.
Something wild like that.
Yeah. So
it's a big world.
And we're seeing here, we've got the sun at 1 degree of Leo. And we've got the moon at 1 degree of Aquarius. We always have an opposition between the sun and the moon at the full moon and a conjunction at the new moon. You could see also that we have the malefics are co-present with both of these lights. The only other thing that is really aspecting this lunation is Uranus, and not really in a very tight aspect, although it will be present by whole sign. The new moon that's coming up in August is at 16 degrees of Leo, will be much closer in this square with Uranus. So that's something to keep your eyes out for. But anything else you notice about this full moon, Tanja, off to get us started here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of gone over the vibes for the lights. That malefic presence is really real. And so it's like kind of, to me, I see a lot of tension of opposites where it's like, it's this bright, full kind of like culmination feeling, but also there's like a pall over it. And I feel like that's going to play out kind of like throughout people's personal charts too. Like there might be an area in your life where you're like having this moment where it's like, I should be happy, but like there's a fly in the ointment, or there's something that like where your heart is saying yes, but the rest of you is, or your life circumstances maybe saying no. And like those are the things where it's kind of like that tension between kind of like these moments where it should be something that feels so good, and that's like you're like, this is the highlight, but it's not everything that I thought it would be for some reason.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that we have Mars co-present with the sun. We want to take action, right? We've got this, that's kind of that 7 of Wands decan where we're trying to stand our ground and fight for our authenticity and say, do we have to like dig our heels in, in the fixed sign of Leo and fight for our right to stay at this particular place or moment or
defending
whatever.
Your crown.
Exactly. Defending
the haters are coming.
That's right. Exactly. That's a Mars ruled decan, and you've established yourself in the second decan of Leo. You've gained victory, but then you once you gain a position of power, like you said, people start coming for you, and that's the thing with Giannis now. And now that Giannis is a champion, people are going to be gunning for him, and the Bucks in general.
People don't do a drinking game on this episode where you take a shot every time he says Giannis, because it will be dangerous for you. I'm just warning you now. Don't do it.
You gotta cut me some slack though out there, people. I've been a fan of that team for 30 years, and they've been really, really bad for like, so much of that time
for so
period.
Long.
And I've even been on this message board, this discussion board where it's called Real GM, and we've been connecting for many years now. I've actually met up with a few of them in Milwaukee. Tanja and I went to a playoff game in 2010 in Milwaukee, and we met up with some of my friends from this board, and a lot of we bonded on that message board over how bad they were. It's like this almost like this AA meeting for the Bucks, so I've had a really nice time just seeing all of those folks feel the joy of accomplishing something that they've dreamed about for a long period of time as well. And Yeah, I don't know. It's like I
Well,
said.
think about this too. Like
Yeah,
for your boy Giannis, like
yeah.
he reaches this pinnacle of the championship, but his brother
Oh God,
is
yeah.
in the hospital, right?
Yeah, his brother's in quarantine
In quarantine,
because
so
he was
he
in
couldn't be
COVID
there. So
protocols.
like the person that he wanted to
Right,
be there the most with, probably like holding their hands and like
right.
screaming at the crowd, like, so it's like that kind of the victory, but it feels incomplete, like we were talking about just then. So there's kind of
Totally.
like this is the, it should be everything, but there's like a little something that's just, it's, you wanted it but it's not there.
Yeah, there's I think there's actually a Disney movie coming out about Giannis's life, and they don't even have to like embellish it at all. Just they just need to like look at what's actually happened over the course of this dude's experience. And I mean, the script writes itself with him for
It does.
sure.
It's very dramatic, the kind of story we love in this country, which is the rags to riches.
Well, and I'll tell
We
you,
love it.
another thing that sticks out to me about this type of experience with the Olympics, with NBA basketball, is that I have such fond memories of sports in general because it was a way for me to connect with my parents, my grandparents. It was a shared activity that we did as a kid growing up. Like I played hockey and baseball and basketball growing up, and my dad was like manager of a team, and he would take me on these road trips where we would go travel to do stuff. He made so many sacrifices, both in time and financially, to help me to do these things. Again, from a position of privilege, really. And but thinking about it now and what he sacrificed for me to be able to do that was an incredible amount. But I think that it is so inspiring to see these people live their dream. And like my own daughter who has gone, I've I had the little bit of the, the karmic wheel spun when we were doing swimming in this house, and she was doing club swimming and sacrificing time and money and all of that willingly because it was awesome to see her get good at something. But
Very special.
she came to me as she watched every single playoff game with me. It was this bonding thing. And my daughter's 17 years old and she's almost an adult. And it's usually a time in the household where you're starting to kind of grow apart. And it's hard sometimes to reconcile your relationship that you had previously as a parent and a child and this new almost adult in your house that's trying to create their own independent life. And my daughter, after game 5 of the NBA finals, came up to me. This was when the Bucks won in Phoenix, a really dramatic fashion. She's like, I love basketball. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I think I want to play basketball. Like, she's about to be a senior in high school. She's like, I want to play for the high school team. I'm like, okay, all right. Are you sure? She's like, yeah, that would be. I think I could do it. I'm like, well, it's in your blood. I mean, I played 1 year of high school basketball, my senior year, just like she's trying to do now. Um, you know, like with no organized basketball experience before. I just was a crazy person. This was during the time of the Dennis Rodman, Michael Jordan Bulls, and I was trying to do my best Dennis Rodman impersonation by just outworking and out hustling people. But uh, we got her a hoop. We went and did an epic journey to get her a basketball hoop off like Facebook Marketplace or something, and then take it apart and
It was a hunt.
put it in the
You
car.
guys manifested it.
We did,
You,
and she's been shooting buckets for the last week, and I'm not going to put it past her. Like her high school team is this girls basketball at her school is a no cut sport, so if she wants to play, she'll play, and it's just really cool to see someone who is so inspired that they're like, I really want to put in this work and achieve this goal, and that to me is what sports is all about. And but beyond that, it's just given us an activity to do and to bond over. And even regardless of what happens with her competitively, that alone is worth, you know, the price of putting in the time, the hours, and watching the sports. If that's the end result, I mean, that alone is worth its weight.
we love it. We love a good training montage.
Yeah, right. We'll have to. Yeah,
Start
exactly.
cue up the Rocky theme
Totally,
music.
totally. Well,
Get
you
her
could. I
little
mean,
gray sweatsuit.
we're both Leo ascendants, so like we're almost to the exact same degree. Third decan Leo ascendants. She's got a Sag moon in the first decan of Sagittarius, And she's a little Capricorn that's like, like, oh, I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. She's got a really good work ethic and things like that. But I think Giannis, if I had to guess, I think Giannis, go ahead and take a drink. I think Giannis is a Leo ascendant too. I was looking at his chart and trying to guess his birth time, and it makes a lot of sense with him being a Leo rising as well. But
speaking of Leo's wild note, can you hear the cats fighting behind me?
No.
Okay.
No.
They want to be on the show so bad.
Oh, well,
the door. See again, like the cats want to be on the show.
You can break them.
The door says no.
You really want to bring them out, you can, I guess. Okay.
Chaotic.
So let's. So you could see here we've got this opposition with the two lights. Uranus being the only other planet that's really making an aspect. One couple of the things I wanted to point out is we do have Jupiter during this cycle that's going to be retrograding back into Aquarius on the 28th, and we did have Venus.
Jupiter, no.
The Venus,
we got the benefic drop off.
Right.
We got the benefic drop off coming here.
Well, yeah, and Venus just went into its fall in Virgo. So both of these things mean that the benefic planets are really losing a lot of dignity, within a week. Within 1 week, we have Venus going into her fall and, retrograde Jupiter moving out of its domicile back into the house of Saturn. So we're losing a lot of support from the benefics within the next few weeks. And I can't help but think that some of this may be, the pandemic related. We're really seeing a lot in the news coming up about, potential new limitations coming back with Delta variants and things like that. It's a real shame because I will say, like, over the last few weeks, it's taken me a long time to really start to feel comfortable re-entering society, and almost because I didn't trust it. And now I'm like ready. I'm like, hey, I want to go outside. I want to do stuff. I want to meet up with people. And I just feel like, man, now that it's going to be a lot of we're going to be backtracking a little bit in the couple weeks ahead. And there's some real challenges, I think, on the horizon. And it may not just be COVID related, but I have a feeling that's going to be a real big part of the conversation.
I think a lot of it too is coming up with, there's so many questions around like justice. I mean, voting in America in particular, and kind of all over the world, like we're seeing this kind of like struggle between kind of like the existing forces and kind of these very dominating, very strong forces, and people who are starting to be like, no, we want a voice. We don't have a voice. And, this isn't fair. Like the power isn't balanced evenly. And I feel like as we're watching Jupiter kind of like slide back on into Aquarius, like it's going to be kind of dumping some of that benefic energy, especially once it goes direct again, kind of back into some of those issues. So like, Saturn is having these kind of like this coldness, this separation, these walls or like these structures where people are on the inside, they're on the outside. And hopefully like Jupiter kind of being back, sharing a domicile with that planet again is going to be a little bit of a mitigating force. But now it's still kind of like plummeting backwards, like out of its house. I loved the idea that it's like Jupiter just got home and like kicked off its shoes and like put on some cartoons, and then like phone goes off and it's like, you got to come in and work a double, like back into it, into Saturn's house.
Yeah, and Darren is saying the attempt to crack down on voting is beginning to happen here in the UK as well with voter ID law. Yeah, that's something that's happening here in the States as well, Darren.
We're having a lot of struggles with that. A
lot of battles over voting rights and people trying to take the voting rights away. Darren, what's your sun, Darren? I'm getting some strong Virgo Capricorn vibes from you. You what do you got? What do you got, buddy? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think these things are playing out, on the personal, on the collective, and so we're seeing these kind of like clashes, and it's going to probably heat up again, kind of as that Uranus square kind of like comes back in, and it's just going to be a spicy late summer.
Well, and I think Jupiter to me has Darren's got a Pisces sun. Okay, so
nice.
Okay, there we go. All right. So I think that what we're seeing a little bit is Jupiter sort of I do think Jupiter can represent limitlessness, right? like if Saturn represents the limitations, Jupiter is sort of like the opposite of that, like the expansiveness, the, you know, the ability to beget things, the demiurge. And with Jupiter going back out of its domicile and into Saturn's house, it's going to be a lot harder to expand, to feel that freedom. That's why I think some of the freedoms may be backtracking a little bit, because there's really, I think it, and it goes back to this. Anytime a planet is going retrograde, it's being recalled to the stand to be able to give further testimony. And I think that what we saw over the last year and a half is that we had a lot of people that did some great work with the pandemic and followed the rules, but we had an equal number that did not, and that really didn't do their part. And we're seeing some of the consequences of that type of action. And really, that's part of, I think, the backslide on some level too. Part of it may just be that, you know, there's just greater things that are not necessarily in all of our control right now too. And then I think that's something to keep in mind with a thing like a disease or a pandemic. Some of it's just not anyone's fault. It's just bad fortune. But I do think that there are ways we can come together as a community to mitigate that and to create more of our own luck, rather than just, you know, perpetuating the negative. Darren says that he's a Cancer rising with a Capricorn Mars. Okay, there we go.
There it is. That's a dope Mars. Yeah, I'm jelly. My Mars is garbage.
so yes,
all peregrine and retrograde.
So Jupiter is going to go back into Pisces in December. So right around Christmas or so, I think Jupiter's heading back into Pisces for like 4 or 5 months, a really short period of time.
Yeah, it's going really fast by then, so it just rockets through. Yeah, which is like, soak it up while you can.
And
I wish that we could kind of like linger in it for a little bit, because it feels like it's just been in Saturn ruled signs literally forever. Totally. But it's just going to zap right through.
And we will see Jupiter retrograde back into Aquarius exactly on the 28th of July. So really, we've got a week. You got a week left of Jupiter to do Jupiter things, okay? The only bad thing about Jupiter moving into Pisces is at that same exact time, we're going to have a Venus retrograde in Capricorn. So we're going to be like, yay, we're ready to go. And then Venus is like, nope, there's something else coming. So
are you ready for drama?
Right.
It's going to be drama, and it's going to be ugly.
Mark your calendars for like the end of January if you're thinking about the time to move forward, because there's some really nice astrology through February.
It's going to get so nice.
The end of February.
Especially after all that, this year and
there's a Jupiter Venus conjunction at the end of February of 2022 that's going to be choice. Okay, so
gorgeous space
some
weather
kind of thing
ahead.
You want to do end of February, beginning of March is a really nice period of time. Okay. Okay. We didn't talk.
We got to get through this one.
Yeah, we didn't talk necessarily about the fixed star Altair being on the moon, but that is a part of our full moon here. And Altair is the star in a constellation that reminds us of an eagle or a vulture, and this was the bird that Zeus turned into to steal away Ganymede, or was deliverer of the thunderbolts. And there's some significations with boldness, risk-taking, acts of courage, endurance. You have any other thoughts on Altair?
Yeah, Tanja? I mean, I think that's great. That kind of Promethean impulse where you're just like really soaring to the heights and like stealing that fire, and that kind of boldness, and the symbol of the eagle as being something like so swift and powerful. I think we're going to see a lot of that kind of on writ large on kind of the stage with the Olympics, especially right now.
Yes, for sure. We also are going to have the first aspect that the moon makes when it escapes the bond, which is a traditional technique where the moon is said to be under the bond when it's within 15 degrees of either side of the opposition with the sun, or I believe the conjunction counts too. So the first aspect we're going to see is an opposition with the moon and Mars in that third decan of Leo, where we're standing our ground, where the third decan of Aquarius is that Seven of Swords card, where we're leaving the past behind and we're taking with us some kind of knowledge, but we're leaving behind what no longer serves us. So the questions that are going to come up when the moon moves through this opposition and hits Mars is like, what are we going to keep? What do we need to let go of? What is worth fighting to maintain in our lives, and what is just not really going to work anymore? And I think we're really going to feel that as we move forward in the next few days here over the course of the weekend.
A wise sage once said, "You've got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run." And I think that aspect sums that up pretty nicely.
You never count your what?
You never count your money when you're sitting at the table.
At the table. That's right. So, okay. A couple other things for this lunation. During the course of this opposition, from the 23rd till the 31st of the last quarter moon, Mercury will move into Leo on the 27th, heading towards a Cazimi with the sun. We're going to have Jupiter retrograde into Aquarius. Mars will move into Virgo on the 29th of July. And then we'll have that last quarter moon on the 31st with the moon in Taurus squaring the sun in Leo. But before we get to those things, a couple other details. We have the daimon or spirit of this decan of Aquarius is Daiki, which roughly translates to justice. So Austin Coppock talks a lot about leaving relationships that are out of alignment with your standards, accepting, escaping injustice, and stepping outside your comfort zone. So kind of taking that helicopter view versus being in the moment, right? Versus living only in the moment and seeing your own subjective experience. And the daimon for this decan with the sun is Hephaestus. And that theme actually came up with the Aquarian decan too, because the face rulers are Venus and Saturn in that face. And the Picatrix, I believe, talks about a coppersmith in this decan. I thought that was fascinating, right?
Big Hephaestus energy, that the dirty work that produces the beautiful art.
Right. And being able to use materials that may not be of the quote unquote highest quality, and using what others discard to create something beautiful. So like a coppersmith, for example, is not working with silver and gold. They're working with this more humble material, but they can still make something pretty interesting. So we may be working with more humble material right now in our life, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do the hard Hephaestian work to create things of great beauty and value. Okay.
I love the kind of Daiki thing too, where it's like you're looking at kind of like your values too, and like kind of how you will accept being treated, to decide to walk away from injustice and to take kind of a really like cold, hard look. That's one of the things that's nice about having things that have these very Saturnian energies. It allows you to look at your life in kind of like a cold, critical way. And sometimes that's important because we're always kind of blinded by our feelings and by our subjectivity and by the way we like imagine and want things to be. And even like, I would say this Venus into Virgo energy, like it's not the best Venus, but to look at your relationships kind of in a really like separating a wheat from the chaff kind of way, and being like, what have I been putting up with that I don't want to put up with anymore? Like, where is there injustice? Where isn't it fair? Where is there just some garbage that I need to get rid of? And I think that as we're kind of moving, especially into this waning moon cycle, this is a great time for kind of letting go of things. Maybe it's personal habits, maybe it's relationships. And like, as we're going back into opening back up and reconnecting with people, there may be some people and things in your life that you're just like, I didn't miss that, during the pandemic. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I can't, like, I would love to come hang out, but I really wouldn't. now that excuse is being taken away.
My Cancerian impulses. Where
there was
a
meme.
Sense. Like, you remember that meme I showed you the other day where it showed someone crying in the mirror, and there was like Cancer on the day of going out after committing themselves like a month ago in a fleeting moment of like
extroversion. I'll get you a shirt that says, sorry, I'm late. I didn't want to come.
Yeah. So Yeah, I think you're right. And I think with the moon in Aquarius, the moon in Saturn's domicile, the moon is about trying to find a feeling of belonging and sort of like an environment where we can grow and be fertile. And we're in barren land here
Hmm.
in exiled country.
Hmm.
So when you feel out of place somewhere, that actually the advantages of that could be that you can see how everything works without being a part of it, right? It's like when you have that outsider's view, you see how the
Hmm.
game is played and you're like, oh wow, that's kind of messed up or whatever. And that is important because when you are a part of something, you have this connection with it that may not allow you to have that type of perspective.
Hmm.
So that outsider's perspective can be very valuable to see how the rules of the game are constructed, you know?
Hmm. That's a great point.
Okay. So anything else with this new moon? Any questions out in the audience here? I'm not seeing any other
With
chats
the
here.
full
So
moon.
yeah, the full moon. Got any other things with the full moon here, Tanya?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good summary. It's a it's a bright, shiny, beautiful mixed bag.
Yeah, yes. So if we move forward, let's just take a look at that first quarter moon. Last quarter, sorry, misspeak. So this is the last quarter moon, and we're going to see on July the 31st at about 8 or 9 degrees of Taurus and Leo. So I'm going to back this up so that we can see the exact quarter there, right around here. Okay, so last quarter moons are generally sort of existential crises. The first decan of Taurus speaks to this kind of planning that happens because of from a fear of scarcity. We've got 5 of Pentacles vibes here with that decan. So we're still trying to establish ourselves, but there may be competition, I think, for resources around this last quarter and questions around what kind of physical resources we're going to be dealing with. Now you can also see that Uranus is really a little bit closer in that square, co-present with the moon. Mercury is about to Cazimi,
An
and
exciting moment.
Mars has moved into Virgo. So this one, I think this last quarter moon may be a little bit easier to deal with because the moon will be in pretty good shape
She
and Mars won't be
she
co-present.
loves her some Taurus.
Yeah, and we've got a nice trine between the moon and Venus and the moon and Mars, right? We've got the trine energy between those planets. We are
And
still
the
dealing
moon
with,
witnessing her ruler is just giving her a little bit of that nice love juice. Like Venus doesn't have a lot to give, but what she's got, she's giving it to that moon.
true. And Jupiter has come back to help with Saturn and to lend its beneficence and maybe ease some of that Saturnian feelings of isolation potentially. I don't know. I think that there's something to be said about this lunation that yes, there will be some kind of questions that come up. There always are at quarter moons,
Mhm.
but I think that there's enough to like about this lunation that it isn't going to be like, I don't know. I think this full moon is tougher than the quarter for
Mhm.
whatever
Mhm.
reason, you know.
Well, and I like the imagery that you have from that card. For me, when I look at that card, like you see, two people and they're struggling in the snow and like they're destitute, they're wearing rags. But if you look above them, like you see this beautiful kind of like lit up church window. And so it's
Right.
like there's support and resources kind of through connection with spirit. And like even when it feels like you don't have anything from, like the physical world, you still have resources that you're not seeing in kind of the spiritual world. And so I think you're seeing that too with that kind of impact from the benefics. Like they don't have a lot to give, but it's there. And it's like, so you may be feeling a little unsteady or a little bit shaky in the material world, but you still have these like kind of really interesting and powerful spiritual and kind of like unseen resources and like connecting and reaching out and asking for help. Like there's help out there to be gotten if you can ask for it.
Yes. Yeah, and this decan also can speak to, yes, you may be shocked into some kind of action. Like I know a lot of clients I've had with placements in this decan, they have had moments of scarcity that cause them to work really hard to plan ahead for the future so that they don't get to that point. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be destitute. It just means that, you don't want to get to that
The
point.
specters there.
Right. Right. You know what could happen. So that causes you to plow your fields. Austin Coppock literally calls this decan the plow. So it's important at that point to get to work. If you don't want to have this experience on this card, you're going to need to kind of, do the hard work necessary to bring things into manifestation. Now, at that last quarter moon, though, that's a waning moon. So that's a great time to let go of maybe some things that are holding you back, some old belief systems, that maybe some scarcity consciousness perhaps that could be holding you back. Anything that, even possessions that may be holding you back, or some kind of physical resource. Maybe it's time to look into cleaning out the attic or something like that. That might be our project.
Why ever would you mention that? We were all cleaning out our metaphorical attics, like a personal attic, if you will.
Totally. Deborah says this is the full buck moon. Oh, that's cool. And then, yes.
Oh, I love that.
Is it really the full buck moon, or are you just making fun of me because it's my full buck moon?
It should be. Yeah. If it's not, it is now.
Yep. And then Darren says, back to the full moon, the south node is in Daniel's arc. The sun is in Daniel's degree. The north node is in Mabahel's arc, and the moon in Mabahel's degree. That synchronicity doesn't happen very often. Are you familiar with this technique?
I'm not as familiar with, it sounds like archangel names. I'm not as familiar with those.
Yeah, Daniel, you have to tell us a little bit more about that in the chat, because I don't know if we're completely familiar with that reference. But there's so many lenses we can look at this stuff through, though. So it's really interesting when people are bringing new lenses to the conversation to bring that through. That was part of my point in my decans talk was, over the course of many, many centuries, the way the lenses that people have looked at the decans through has constantly been shifting based on their, their belief systems, their cultural belief systems, and the techniques that they were using. So it's all good. I really think that, it's all about entrainment. Darren says these are the Kabbalistic angels. Yeah, that's nice. Something that's actually one technique with the tarot that I have not yet dove into quite full forced yet. I know that T. Susan Chang in her book 36 Faces talks a lot about the Kabbalah and things like that. But again, that's another lens that I said in my talk, that each of these lenses you can spend a lifetime studying. And sometimes it's just, we have put our focus on slightly different areas. And
what is T. Susan Chang's book again?
36 Secrets. Did I say Faces?
Yes.
Okay. 36 Secrets. Yes.
Secrets.
Sorry. I'm trying to stream of consciousness here.
No, I'm sorry. I want people to find a book, because I'm sure that everyone is as hungry to add to their pile of books.
It's a good one.
As you are.
Well, and I think it's interesting though, because that's what makes divination so interesting, because there may be one type of system that really speaks to us that we are able to spend more time with. And then that's the beauty of being able to exchange information. And Darren says he's going to email me tomorrow. Yay. so Darren can teach me about the Kabbalistic angels, and maybe we'll learn. I'll share something here, and that's the beauty of exchange. So thank you, Darren, for bringing that into our focus and into our attention here.
Love it.
Okay. So let's just look a little bit at what we've got here. So this is our last quarter moon. I don't think there's anything else that we really need to kind of go over with this. I want
to hit on that Mercury Cazimi coming up. Those Mercury Cazimi moments are always really interesting, because you've got Mercury, who kind of is the messenger and contacting so many of the planets, just kind of moving so fast and chiming everything, and so changeable. And when it connects the sun so perfectly like that, it's a really kind of noteworthy moment, because it's kind of like plunging into the sun and kind of being reborn again. And so when you have Mercury and the sun so tightly conjoined, the sun's kind of absorbing all that Merc juice. and you're going to see some interesting ideas. So like, you know, Mercury is just melting. Mercury's in the furnace right now. And so kind of some of the ideas and like thoughts that you may have about things are just kind of in this like deep kind of like burning reworking. And so that area of your life, especially where, you know, Leo is in your chart, I think people are going to find that there's this thing happening where they're just really like rethinking some things hard, or there's something where it feels like it's just like melting down like a part of their identity or like a part of their world, but it's going to come out on the other side just sparkling fresh and new. And as this kind of like really interesting moment when you can watch for something and you're going to get these messages about kind of what's coming next in that area of your life. And so like I love Mercury Kazimis. They're just really interesting moments to kind of watch for in your personal chart as well.
Well, and you can see here too, here's the moment of the Kazemi. This is August 1st. There's a Saturn opposition with this, almost exactly. So we've got Sun, Saturn, and Mercury opposite Saturn. So there will be some kind of new impulse because this is a superior conjunction of Mercury. Mercury is moving really fast at this time. When we have the inferior conjunction, it's moving very, very slow. The retrograde conjunction, there's two conjunctions of Mercury.
So this is Mercury on its way back out.
Yeah.
Just zippy fast.
So it's going to change from the morning star to the evening star. But it's going to be in a really tight opposition with Saturn. So whatever new ideas and impulses that you're going to be getting, there's probably going to be some compromises that you're going to have to make because of that opposition with Saturn. Remember Saturn's that great like celestial no, right?
Like, and retrograde domicile Saturn is not a nice cold Tony.
Yeah, I can really see this as the impulse that I think would happen with this is we as a collective have some individualistic goals and dreams that we really want to be able to move forward with right now, especially with Mars and Leo, but then again with this Mercury Kazemi. But there's some collective things in the zeitgeist right now that aren't going to allow us to take individual action and fulfill our individual selected desires because of the collective needs of the, you know, of whatever challenges we're experiencing. Again, I can't help but think that, you know, I'm feeling this because I'm like, man, I really want to go play basketball and I want to go do this. And I want my daughter to be able to feel the joy of training and all these things. And in my back of my mind, I'm like, what about COVID? What about COVID? You know, and like, and I could see something where like, even in that example, you want to move forward and meet up with people and play pickup games, but then, you know, Delta variants are coming back and there's backtracking with that. And a lot of like, oh, well, I guess we can't do it exactly the way we wanted to. And you know, make the appropriate adjustment for something in your life that you really desire about moving forward for a sense of identity and things like that. And recognize that there may be sacrifices that come up that are necessary for the good of the whole. And I don't know. I'm nervous about it. I'm a little nervous about this fall. In all truth.
No, that's real. And I think like people are going to be, you know, you'll get fired up about stuff. Like Leo season is when you have that like passion in your heart, or like you kind of start to kind of think about where, you know, in your life you feel that kind of like that longing or that like burning desire for something, that desire for more, the desire to be more. And like Mercury just chiming that really hard and then coming out on the other side, like right into the icy embrace of retrograde Saturn.
It's like, oh, you want to do something?
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice for you, but no, not yet. I mean, and I think that the circumstances around things are just, there's a lot of barriers. One of the nice things about Mercury is like it moves fast, so it's going to be kind of like getting out of that orb. And I think as Mercury gets out of that orb of that really like tight, nasty opposition to Saturn, you're going to start to think of those workarounds. You're going to start to think of those ways where it's like, well, we can't do it this way. You know, what if we do it that way? And like, you know, it's going to, you know, there'll be inspiration that comes and kind of continues to unfold. Like, so that initial kind of beautiful idea that comes to you maybe around the Kazemi, you can't actualize it exactly the way you want. Right. But there's going to be inspiration and help kind of like
stay flexible,
coming with flexible. Time.
right?
It's the air age, baby. It's
Right.
the air age. Flexibility is the order of the day, whether you like it or not.
And especially because this is a opposition and fixed signs, as we
Mm-hmm.
may have an impulse to dig our heels in and say we're going to do this
You can't be
anyway.
rigid.
But what you're gonna end up doing if you do that is you're literally gonna be running full speed into a brick wall, and that's painful. And if you know the brick wall is there, maybe slow down, see if there's a workaround. You know, that's where your patience can come.
Look for a crack, climb up it, get those little little crampons on your feet, and
climb up the wall. That's right. And one of the things I like about the I-Ching and its teachings is it describes almost every type of circumstance you could find yourself in as a human being. And even if you're in a blocked experience, they really talk about the preparation of being able to be ready to return when the flow starts to go again, when the current starts to move in the direction that you want to again. It's about, you know, maybe there's a new skill that you need to learn before you can move forward on your journey. I know, like, just back to our example, you know, my daughter doesn't have a ton of experience with basketball, so she's got a lot of skill work to do in the next 6 months if she wants to, you know, be functional playing this sport. Maybe there's some training you need to do. Maybe there is more information that you need before you go off and do the thing that you want to do, you know, full bore. So, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. What you're doing, the way that you create your own luck and the way that you create your own success is not that you don't have to force your way to every opportunity, but you do have to be ready when your opportunity strikes. And that preparation, even if it's not visible, I think that's the key here. Sometimes we want credit and visibility before something is fully cooked and ready to go. And I think this period of time over the fall is really something's baking, and you may not be able to see it. You know, it's not like we're not presenting the cake yet. We've still got some cooking time, and it's still, you can't see it. You can smell it. You know, you've got a little bit of something good. You know, something good's coming, because something good is coming. But I don't think the really full expression of that good thing happens until early February 2022. And if you can just hang on to that period of time, I do think that's a long time to ask people to hang on, babe. No, it's not. It's 6 months away. If you've held on this long, you know, you've cultivated the skills to be able to do it for 6 months longer. For sure. And I think too, we're still in that training montage. Like, I love that fortune favors the prepared mind. Right. And that this is kind of the thing where it's like a big part of kind of the magic of manifesting is you need to be ready to be ready. Like, if you get a wonderful opportunity and like you don't have your stuff together, like you're just a disorganized mess, like it's going to pass you by. Like, you have to kind of like be ready to strike when the iron's hot. The iron's not hot yet. It's very cold. It's very cold in Saturnian iron right now. And we're still kind of like hammering away at it. Like, this is that Hephaestus energy still. We're still at the forge. We're still just trying to kind of like stoke the fire and like do the kind of like exhausting, pounding work, like the dirty work. We're not at the beautiful, like shaping that final like filigree moment yet. But all of these things are going to kind of like build to that, and laying that infrastructure right now, kind of behind the scenes and like in the, you know, in the dark and in the corners when people can't necessarily see it, is so crucial to kind of being able to make the best of it when the good times come back. I love that. There's a faction of society right now that's thrown on their Steely Dan albums and are like, I don't want to do your dirty work. Oh no, you know, but you got to get over it. Damn. Got to get here. So another date for people to keep in mind as to when some of this frustration may start to alleviate is October the 10th. We're going to see Saturn start to move direct. And I really do think that we've had Saturn retrograding for most of the summer and late spring. And a lot of the restrictions were actually released. I think that some of the actual restrictions may start to come back in the beginning of October if we don't see them right away in the fall, because I think things could start to hit a peak where they're like, you know what, we actually have to Saturn up a little bit. And I think mid-October, early October could be when people actually start to take action on those things, because people move really slow when they're trying to do these things. And especially here in the States, they're really resistant to anything like that.
You don't like making nobody do nothing.
That's right. Deborah says in reference to the buck moon, 100% truth. You can't make this stuff up. Buck emoji. So that's amazing.
I love that.
That is
that's
incredible.
That's a beautiful synchronicity.
That is amazing.
That's delightful.
That it was the buck moon, and they won their championship on that time period. Katie Lynn says, I just bought 36 Secrets. It's a fantastic book. Yeah, I love it. I think that T. Susan Chang comes from the tarot approach and then incorporates the astrology. Whereas
She's wicked
Austin,
smart.
What's that? Yeah.
She is wicked smart.
And
wicked.
Austin's coming from the astrology angle for the most part and the magical angle. And there's some tarot involved in it, but it's sort of like just different focal points, I think, which is really cool.
There's an interview between the two of them on his podcast. That's pretty cool.
I'll have to check that out. I haven't listened to that yet. Okay, so let's move off of this, and we'll just very briefly, we'll touch on the new moon. I'm going to do a whole new live stream on that around this period of time. I have a really exciting guest that I have lined up. I'm going to keep it a secret for now.
It's not me. I promise.
It's not Tanya. Although Tanya is an exciting guest, but I have an exciting guest that is tentatively committed to it at this point. So keep your eyes peeled for that somewhere around August the 4th or 5th. Okay, probably the 4th of August. Keep your calendars free, because I think it's going to be a really good one, a really fantastic guest that we're going to have on that period of time. Okay, but just previewing this, we're going to see the new moon at 16 degrees of Leo on August the 8th in a pretty tight square, albeit separating from Uranus. So this one, there may be some shocking events that play out throughout this period of time. Still have the opposition with Saturn, and not much different from what we were discussing with the first quarter square around this period of time. But that decan has to do with success, victory, having supporters and things like that. So this may be the beginning of really a nice period of time, I think, in the middle of August.
Mm-hmm. Leo season is going to kind of come into its full bloom then.
Yeah, and this will be like the end of the Olympics. The Olympics will be coming to a close around this period of time. We'll be flying high off of Olympic inspiration. Hopefully it all goes on without a hitch.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
The laurel crowns will have been handed out.
That's right. The medals and the wreaths. Yes.
Yeah. Laurel is ruled by the sun.
Oh, cool.
That's like bay and laurel. Great solar herbs.
Nice.
Throw some in your soup.
Casey says 10/10 is my birthday, so that is a nice present. Oh well, there you've got a stationary Saturn baked into your solar return. I think that's good, but
it's better than a retrograde one.
Maybe.
Better than retrograde.
It's just going to be a very Saturnian birthday, Casey, with it stationary, because anytime a planet is stationary, it really is concentrating its energy. So, hopefully you're able to weather the Saturnian solar return. So solar returns are always mixed bags too, so I wouldn't get too bent out of shape about it, but happy birthday in advance. All right, so I think we've covered the full moon, the last quarter, and previewed the new moon very briefly. We have an animal that was associated with this. Tanya, tell us about this animal that we pulled for this lunation for the full moon in Aquarius.
It is another one of my favorites. It is the octopus, everyone's favorite 8-legged, super crazy alien, shape-shifting, crazy smart sea creature. They're amazing creatures, and I really like the symbolism of this for this lunation. It's just it has so many like weird powers. Like it's one of those things where it's like it has blue blood, it's got 3 hearts, it's got tongues on its feet, it's got 3 brains, like it's just amazing. Like there's so much to love about this animal. And I think that like one of its most kind of distinctive traits is its ability to literally be a shapeshifter. Like it can turn into, there's some varieties where it's like they'll change their texture, they'll change their color. It looks like a rock, surprise, it's an octopus. Like, and that's kind of one of the things where it's like there's a level of mutability that is a really useful power sometimes, where it's like, to me, sometimes when you're facing a foe, or like you're in kind of like a situation where there's this spectrum and it's like there's something that's against you, like to just be able to like kind of like morph out of the way, or like morph into something where it's like, I'm harmless. Like, it's a really interesting, I love octopuses as kind of almost like a form of glamour magic, where it's like you're changing into something completely different, like at the drop of a hat. And it's a really beautiful and interesting kind of powerful defense to have. They can use tools. So like they'll, get two halves of a coconut and like hide inside it. They'll hit things with rocks. They'll hide inside things. They just love to torment scientists,
They'll
which is,
climb in your mouth.
they'll climb in your mouth. They're just off the chain. Like the My Teacher, the Octopus documentary guy, like a man literally fell in love with an octopus because they're that cool. Like his wife was probably back on land. Like, I guess he's scuba diving again. Like, and he's just out there like lovingly filming her like little arms, and like the way she like drifts through the water and changes color. And it's like, who is she? She's stealing your man. That's what she's doing.
Well, that camouflage aspect of it all is important because,
Mm-hmm.
the decan that the sun is in is, the spot called the spotlight, but also
Mm-hmm.
Austin Coppock in 36 Faces talks a lot about wearing a mask. It is the Saturn ruled decan of
Mm-hmm.
Leo, and Saturn was the master of feigned appearances. So this may be, some notes I wrote down for Octopus was, staying hidden, maybe keeping quiet about your plans at this point, blending in. An octopus is able to multitask, like you were saying, with all those different tentacles. And also
They're dexterous.
And trusting your intuition. Octopuses are able to steer clear of danger by having almost a sixth sense about what's going on around them. So if you're not getting the right feeling about something, it's okay to blend in, to not have to be so Leo, right? Not have to be like, look at me, yay, I'm this wonderful thing. Like, especially with this full moon, it's just like, well, how about temperance? That you
Mm-hmm.
can be excited about something. Maybe you can find personal identity through the group consciousness, through participating in something greater than yourself. And Katie Lynn Young says, Tanya, your animal knowledge is a thing of beauty. So
You're
Tanya
so sweet.
is
Thank
a
you so
font
much.
of trivia. She has
I love weird trivia.
yeah.
One of the things that's really notable about octopuses too is that octopuses is the correct plural. It's octopi would be Latin. It's not a Latin word. I don't know. But one of the things about them that's really powerful too, and they show this in the My Octopus Teacher movie. But both the males and females, like the males die after they fertilize their eggs, and the females die after kind of their eggs hatch. And so it's this really kind of like gnarly but beautiful metaphor for kind of like, part of you has to die for something to go on, like, or part of you has to die to really make a transformation of some sort. Like you pour your love and your energy into something that is like, what's the most meaningful thing to you, and like just like spend all your energy just like turning into that, or like making it happen. Like the female octopus hangs out with her eggs and kind of just like doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't move, just kind of like gently blows water on them and like protects them from harm, with her like last breath. Like that's what she does. And then they hatch, and like there's a million of them, and the circle of life continues. But that's just something it's really kind of like heartbreaking and beautiful that these like intelligent, caring creatures just use their last breath to like send the next generation on their way. And that's something to kind of like take into too, because there's, when you change, part of you has to die.
Sacrifice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sacrifice for the generations that come after. And I think that's definitely an Aquarian theme too,
Mm-hmm.
is,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of,
Legacy.
legacy, and thinking about not necessarily needing credit for the work that you've done. Like octopus literally dies before they get to see their babies grow up and do whatever they need to do. And I think that this is something I counsel people with prominent Aquarius placements is, you're not doing what you're doing so that you can gain the applause or the approval of the collective. You're doing it as a gift to future generations. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do, whether you're getting the approval from your peers or not. Because remember, you're on the fringe, you're on the frontier, you're the exile. And you know, as an Aquarian type person, that you are able to see the rules of the game that the people that are inside the system may not be fully aware of. Mm-hmm. So that's painful. That's so painful for a lot of these folks. You can see their face just driving me like, really? I just have to keep doing this? But I want to belong so much. And it is painful. And that's why the sun is fallen or exiled, in exile in Aquarius. We want to feel this acknowledgement and this, belonging so much, but it's hard.
You want to shine.
Right. But it's hard to gain that with the sun in that position, especially, and sometimes with other prominent Aquarian placements. So, but you got to know at the end of the day, you're doing the right. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I know I'm doing the right thing, whether people approve of this or not, because these are my octopus babies, right? I want my octopus babies.
These are my many-armed children.
That's right. I need to send my octopus babies out into the world, whether I get to see them live their octopus lives or not. I know most of them will get important. Eaten. That's right. Why do you have to be bummer like that, Tanya?
Sorry. Some of them will survive. Enough of them will survive.
That's like you give the Aquarian placements hope. Well, most of your babies are going to get eaten. Might as well not even do it.
No. But the best ones live. Like, that's the thing. Like, you have to have a lot of idea babies so that the strongest and best
and I
make
think
it out into the world.
This is something to think about with like things like the actions we're going to have to take as a collective to beat things like COVID, but also with climate change happening. I know we're having heat waves again and lots of challenges with
everything's on fire again.
Right. And there's going to be actions that you're going to have to take now where you may not see the result of that, but your kids might and your grandkids might. And those future generations, like that 7th generation type of experience that indigenous people of these Americas were espousing, the actions that you take have that effect. And that's something that we've lost touch with, I think, a lot, especially in, the West and with people trying to get theirs or fly into fucking space. I'm sorry. Like, what a waste of resources.
You can't stop being mad about that.
I'm so angry about that.
I'm
sorry.
And I know that like I shouldn't like focus on things that I can't control that like infuriate me, but it's insane. There are some things that are happening right now, like the imbalance of things is like so insane. Like, it makes me feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I'm just like, this is reality.
That Jeff Bezos could like end hunger in America with the money that
if he felt like it,
like
but he doesn't.
The money that he used to fly into space or something, like nobody would starve anymore. And to me, that's just like, what hubris, But
it's weird times.
We should try to end these on a more positive note here. But it is important to acknowledge the challenges that we are still going through, while still having hope for the future, because hope is really an important thing to hold on to while still working on bringing things into homeostasis and equilibrium, because we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us in the next few decades in the future. In the very near future, we are already hitting the crisis point where if we don't do some really massive changes, it's going to be very difficult for human beings to habitate this planet anymore. And you're not going to be saved by flying to Mars. Like the billionaires might, but the rest of us are going to be stuck here.
They won't. It'll be like being in like an airline, like an airplane forever. Like, how terrible are airplane bathrooms? Like, imagine if it's worse because there's no gravity. Yeah. Like, think of the implications that it's so nasty. No one wants to actually live in space.
No. If something goes wrong, your brain gets sucked out of your face.
Space mistakes, like a single bolt, like one bolty boy, just like at the wrong angle, flying through the air is going to kill you all.
Yeah, and this is what's so annoying about Elon Musk is that the way that he thinks is so the antithesis of having to take care of the place that we have here, rather than saying, well, we use this planet up, let's
crumple it up and
go find a new one to exploit. So sorry to get spicy with that, but
it's spicy times. I think too, though, one of the things that with like the Cazimi and kind of like, Jupiter getting pulled back into it, like there's a lot of people it's like Mr. Rogers says, like, look for the helpers.
Right.
People worked so hard and poured their hearts and souls into like figuring out how to combat this illness. People are working hard to figure out how to, live more efficiently and kind of handle the environment appropriately. Like, there's so many people who are pouring their hearts and souls and who are kind of like living the mission of solving these problems. So there's people that are living the mission of like making the problems, and there's people that are living the mission of solving the problems. And I think that like we all have our little kind of like pieces of the puzzle, where it's like we all have our special thing that we can do that is going to make the world a little bit better, like whatever it is. Like, are you a cat whisperer? Like, are you,
I am. I'm a cat whisperer.
Exactly. But like, what do you have that that's going to make the world a little bit better? And I think that like as we're kind of coming into our own like little solar inspiration moments, especially as we head into like the full moon and kind of like coming off of it and internalizing that and kind of being like, okay, like I've had the idea, what do I do next? How do I kind of work around the difficult circumstances and the pain and suffering I see all around me to like do a little bit of good?
Totally. All right, Tanya, we've got one more thing to get through here, and let's wrap this thing up. Darren says, I love both of your styles of interpretation. Together with the deck and talk, it has clicked so much into place for me. Thank you so much. Thank you, Darren. Thank you for being here. You've added so much to this chat here. It's nice to get some new voices.
I'm gonna look up that angel business.
Definitely.
I love new spirits to connect with.
I'm expecting that email, Darren. And he also says, I'm so with you regarding Elon Musk. That guy is so very selfish. I agree 100%. He sucks. People try to compare him to Buckminster Fuller or something like that. They are not the same. Buckminster wanted to help people.
Don't do Bucky dirty like that.
Elon is not the same. Or Nikolai Tesla or something. No, not even close. Sorry, not even close. Maybe some of them have tried to have some innovative ideas, but intention matters. And a guy like, if you really want a hero, Buckminster Fuller was an amazing person, and his story is really, really interesting. And he had some great ideas that I think that inspired a lot of people. And the intentions behind it, I think, were really virtuous as well. Not like Elon, it's just ego. It's his ego and his selfish agenda. So we'll see. But anyway, let's do one more thing here. I'm going to share the screen here. It's not like he's going to see this and be like, well, I should change my ways.
We did it, guys.
We did it.
We talked trash about a billionaire and they changed.
We shamed a billionaire into being a better person.
We did it, fam. God. We can go home.
All right. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing on the screen here a hexagram from the I-Ching. I always do an I-Ching reading for these lunations and various video things. And the fascinating thing about this is I got the same exact hexagram with the same changing line that I got for the new moon in Cancer. So that theme must be pretty important for what we're experiencing now. And this is 55, which translates roughly to zenith, fullness, splendor, plenty, living in the present, making the most of the good times. So you were talking about, last time we were talking about, hey, get while the getting's good when Jupiter's in Pisces. I just had a friend who was like, hey, man, we got to go for a walk because I'm going back to teach in the fall and they don't follow COVID protocols and we're not going to be able to get together after that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, we got a week, so.
Enjoy the last of the juke juice, people.
Yeah. And this hexagram too talks about a ruler that was waiting for a sign to take over power. And he was given the sign of this total eclipse. It said, okay, it's time for you to ascend to the throne or something like that. So there is the changing line here says, abundance is shaded so completely that one can see the dimmest stars at noon. He breaks his right arm, no blame. So some of the notes I had here is the total eclipse of the sun, which is generally a sign of action. But when you break your right arm, and a right arm is your, usually in these symbolic languages, self-directed action, the ability to take control. So not having the ability to maybe take that self-directed action is reflected in that full moon and with the malefics. It's, the rise of the underdog potentially, or the rise of petty people that keep you from doing the necessary actions. I think it could be both. I think in light of maybe taking a little bit of an alternate perspective, seeing the Olympics and things like that, it may be that power structures are turned off so that maybe the underdog or the exile is able to be seen in this kind of circumstance. But I think the final thing is there are circumstances that are probably going to be beyond your control with this lunation, and it's okay to kind of take a time out, have patience, try not to force your way. We're changing to the hexagram number 51, which is called shock, thunder, upheaval, the arousing, reassessment, a blessing in disguise, though, potentially. Okay, so the shock hexagram is something like the something that wakes you up, that says, okay, I'm awake now. Now I know what really needs to do. It stirs you out of your lethargy into action. So Tanja, we've got some questions here for the audience to meditate on. With 55, it says, what are you called to do? What decisions must you make now? And then at 51, this is from Hilary Barrett, the I-Ching. She has a I-Ching translation. She says, what must change for hexagram 51 and what will continue? So again, we were saying what stays and what goes with that, that opposition with Mars as the first aspect. So any final thoughts out with that, Tanja?
I mean, yeah, I think that we kind of went over it, but again, like, you reach the lunar kind of like that full moon moment. And that's kind of like the pinnacle of an energy. And then what happens next is like, it's draining away. And so this is just such a great time for kind of like really looking at, an area of your life, especially kind of on that Leo Aquarius axis, like where that falls in your chart. For example, there's going to be stuff that it's time to just like, cut it out, like, and that's going to like make you stronger. Like this is kind of like that time where we're still in that training montage. And so you're just going to be, running up those stairs over and over again and like lifting those weights and like, getting hit and getting knocked down for a little bit longer. But these are going to be the hits that you take that are going to kind of like make you strong like bear, especially kind of for upcoming things. I think that it's like you're cutting away what doesn't work and like kind of like building up your toughness in the meantime.
Right. And give me one final Giannis moment, because I think this really plays into what you're saying. Not every athlete or anybody who is successful at something succeeds the first time. And one of the things that happened in the last few years is, in the playoffs a few years ago, the Bucks were within literally one game of going to the NBA Finals. And Giannis Antetokounmpo missed a number of free throws to basically lose the game. And that was like a final hurdle that he had to overcome. And in this game 6 of the NBA Finals this year, to win the championship, he made 17 out of 19 free throws, which is incredible, because in every game before that, he'd hit maybe 50 to 60%, and he shot almost 90% in that final game. He was so locked in.
It was
like the final boss battle, right? And I think that's something to keep in mind. Our failures make us build our character, right? And you could see this with the Olympics too. There's going to be people in the Olympics this year that win a gold medal that have failed in previous Olympics, and their dream was crushed, and they needed to build that resiliency to be able to take that final step. So recognize that even if you go through a blockage or a failure period, it isn't the final answer, right? Sometimes this may be necessary to really forge your character for the future flowering and the future unfolding that will make that victory that much sweeter, because you've gone through the trials and the tribulations, right?
There's a phrase for that: failing forward.
Yeah.
So like you fail, and it shows you the weaknesses. It shows you the chinks in your armor, and like, failure isn't final. Like it's a stepping stone to success. Like no one who is successful just kind of like came right out of the gate and they were like, I'm perfect in every possible way, and I'm like a golden god, you guys. Like people went broke, people missed the winning shot, people got dumped. Like those are the things that kind of make you who you are, and that kind of like are actually the stepping stones that are going to lead you where you want to go. That's so true.
Totally. And Darren is giving us one final inspirational quote. Dragon Ball Z Super Thief.
This isn't even my final form. That's it, people. You want to shoot lightning out of your eyes? Like,
yeah, there you go. So
never let go of your dream.
That being said, thank you so much, everyone who has been here today, who has participated in the chat. It is always wonderful to see all of you. Thank you, Tanja, for being here with me again. Tell us where we can find you, Tanja, and support you and the work that you do.
Yeah, I am Tanja Andrews, TanjaAndrews. On Instagram is probably the easiest way to find me. And you can also see some of the things I do at Third Coast Mojo.
Right. So you have an Instagram, Third Coast Mojo, with your stuff and an Etsy store there as well, right?
Yeah, sort of.
You do. There's some good stuff.
Very sparse. It's still in the stepping stone phase.
That's fine. It's fine. Build your character.
That's right.
And you can find me at spencermichaud.com. I also have Instagram and Twitter at Spencer Michaud. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications if you want to know when live streams and when videos are happening in real time or when I've posted. I also do have a newsletter that you can sign up for that will give you a little bit of a heads up when I'm going to go live, and different discounts on readings that I do and classes that I'm teaching and astrological tutoring opportunities. All of those things the best way to keep in touch with that is signing up for the newsletter. And there's a link in the video description here if you want to do that. Feel free to reach out for a reading or astrological tutoring. So any of those ways you can support the work that I'm doing. I also have a buymeacoffee.com account if you want to make a material contribution to the work that I'm doing here. I just posted that Deccan thing for free, the webinar thing, because I think that I want it to be available to the most amount of people possible. But you definitely are doing me a solid when you make a donation through those avenues. And I appreciate all of you so very, very much. So thank you all for being here today. Keep your eyes peeled in the next week for the astrology of August. We're going to be doing that coming up next week with some guest that I don't have yet, and we have a very special guest.
Determined.
In 2 weeks, we have a very special guest for the new moon in Leo. So mark your calendars for that. So we will see you all the next time. Thank you so much for being here today, and be kind to yourself and be kind to one another. Take care, everyone. Peace. Go enjoy the Olympics. Opening ceremonies, 15 minutes. Woo! All right. We'll see you later, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.